In honor of Red Ribbon Reviewers, I want to tell you about their charity pick for this year, Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders is a non-profit organization that provides emergency medical aid to people in crisis, with over 67,000 staff members of 169 nationalities. They offer medical humanitarian assistance to people based solely on need, no matter the race, religion, gender, or political lifestyle. They ensure to reach people in need without restriction and provide aid directly. They mean to do no harm, and they are committed to provide the highest quality medical care possible and act in the patient's best interests while respecting them. If you wish to know more about them or make a donation, you can visit their website at DoctorsWithoutBorders.org. And now, on with the comedy. It all started with a sandwich. A simple Christmas tradition, kicking back with a nice foot-long sub, a couple of chips, zero sugar beverage. You know, I've been trying to cut back, go figure. But then comes that ultimate question, what to pair it with? What to snack on? Of course, there wasn't really much for slim pickings on a holiday night like this, unless you want to indulge yourself with a marathon of Indiana Jones movies, and the questionable, does Temple of Doom even count as a Christmas flick? Just makes you wonder. Of course, the traditional channels, either Marathon A Christmas Story or just some random holiday fluff. Even one or two that maybe don't count but kind of do. And that got me thinking. There's one movie I had on the backlog for such a long time. A very, very long time that I've always wanted to discuss. One that has something to do with Christmas but technically isn't. A Christmas alternative, if you will. Another gremlin of the batch. Or a diehard that really, really need to be discussed. Of course, I could have indulged myself in a nice Italian BMT with a little extra Fritos crunched in with cheese sauce, barbecue, and mayonnaise, and a tiny bit of sweet onion teriyaki sauce. No, not yet. I wasn't fully fulfilled until I covered such title. Though I do hunger for something else. An underrated title that needs to be discussed. Bella, guard my Christmas dinner. I got a movie to cover. What? If I'm gonna act the part as a detective, I might as well dress like one, huh? Anyway, in a follow-up to last year when we covered Sherlock Holmes, there have been tons and tons and tons of adaptations of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's famous character that can solve crimes with basic deduction and scientific reasoning. But few tend to question exactly, how did Sherlock Holmes come to be? Sure, there's been tons of adaptations and different interpretations, but no one ever really cracked into the deep identity of who Sherlock is, or what he became in life, which is a mystery of itself. Well, that was something filmmaker Chris Columbus wanted to answer after reading some Charles Dickens novels, and being inspired by the romance of the Victorian period. The result was Young Sherlock Holmes, a movie that came in a time before prequels and what-if premise-driven projects were common today. Examining into the youthful years of one's past just to see who they would later become compared to their adult years is an ideal one to explore.
McDonald's presents Holiday Huggable Muppet Babies.
Oh, did someone mention a hug, Kermit?
and highly profitable if done right.
Young Sherlock Holmes had the pedigree of being the perfect holiday blockbuster, with a unique and original story, amazing special effects, and the advantage to have the events take place during the Christmas season. So the biggest mystery is, for something that should have been a big crowd pleaser, how is it this entry gets swept under the rug so more often than celebrated?
Of course, this does beg the question, why? Why is this movie not talked about? Why is it so underrated? Is there one particular thing that keeps people avoiding it, or few know about it? Compared to so many 1980s cult classic flicks, how is it that this one, with such many things plugging into it, gets swept under the rug so much more often than it shouldn't? Well, fundamentally, much like with any good mystery, we must examine our elements, in order to understand the good and bad of this flick.
First, the writing. Now, let's give Columbus some credit. He really did his research on this one to avoid offending Sherlock purists. He read up on a lot of the original tales, looked into the author's additional work, and even studied some of the past movie incarnations. The script even got additional help from famous Sherlock enthusiast John Bennett Shaw and English novelist Geoffrey Archer as a script doctor to ensure the authenticity of the story and the period it's set in. Columbus wanted to focus on the character's traditional traits and imagine how they would come to be. Why was Sherlock cold and calculating? Why was he alone and to himself most of the time? Granted, this wasn't the first time, as other original takes on the Sherlock character made similar attempts, but here we get to see him as a teenager. And normally teens were ruled by emotion, which was a neat idea. And given how well he was doing with Spielberg thanks to Gremlins, it seemed like his script being produced by Amblin Entertainment worked hand in hand. The plot involves, what else? Showing how Sherlock and Watson met, solve a case, and become the people they would later become in time. For the most part, the backbone of the movie is there, and it leads to plenty of possibilities which are used as well. And when we do get answers to things like how Sherlock got his famous hat and pipe, they're just whittled down to quick blink and miss moments that don't linger on for too long. But when the movie does show how the character is able to present his skills, we see them. I like it when he first meets Watson, and immediately he picks apart everything about him, which is something in character with Sherlock.
Your name is James Watson. You're from the north of England. Your father is a doctor. You spend a considerable amount of leisure time writing, and you have a particular fondness for custard tarts.
How's it done? Is it some sort of magic trick?
Pure and simple deduction. The name tag on your mattress reads J. Watson.
And I do like how before the actual problem begins, we get treated to a side sequence where Sherlock is challenged to find a missing trophy to show how he uses his deduction and knowledge. It's a great way to establish those unfamiliar with the source by how Holmes functions as a detective. He's just not some kid with pure smarts, but we do get to see him examine the theft and actually go deep into his mindset on how he's able to solve a case, which is important to consider how his mind works. So when the actual mystery begins, we see Sherlock put his will to the test. Which brings to the second element, the cast. Nicholas Rowe and Alan Cox respectfully play Holmes and Watson to the point you can actually see these two becoming the adult counterparts. I love their banter, their chemistry, and just how they bounce off each other. And with expected buddy pairings, Holmes is more open and adventurous, while Watson is more compressed and tense. It's a bit cliche, but I think it works in the movie's favor because these two easily channel the tone and mannerisms of Holmes and Watson.
I kind of feel bad that these two didn't move on to do anything else, because child acting is a bit of a rarity, and the 1980s is no exception. There were some good examples and some pretty easy bad examples depending on who you hire and who's directing. Though this is a very, very good case where these two leads are so believable as a young Holmes and Watson that I kind of feel bad that these two didn't really do much afterwards. But hey, they gave a solid performance, and I'm pretty well hooked that I can see these two getting older and turning into the adult version of Holmes and Watson. In fact, instead of that Robert Downey Jr. movie, why don't we just do a movie with these two today? I'd love to see if they still have the same chemistry that they did back in 1985.
The side characters are equally enjoyable too. Sophie Ward plays Holmes' love interest, who does try to help out, even if she later falls into the damsel in distress trope and love at first sight cliché. Yet the character is kind and nice enough to the point you don't want to see anything bad happen to her. She even has an uncle that creates all sorts of strange inventions, including an almost practical flying machine, and even he's kinda cool, given it was a full-scale rig that worked thanks to a lot of rigging and 2 120-foot cranes to make it possible.
very hopeful sign.
Impractical.
But what's more interesting is he's played by Nigel Stock, who also played Dr. Watson in a BBC Sherlock series from 1965. So it's a nice little Easter egg having an actor who played in a Sherlock adaptation appear here. Roger Ashton Griffiths as Inspector Lestrade is a near-perfect take on the character. Lestrade is the one who's always trying to be better than Holmes and often doubts the guy's methods. Though it's kinda strange to see him appear here given Holmes is meant to be a teenager, but again, it's nice to have a little origin to know how they first met and what sets them apart. Anthony Higgins as Professor Wraith is kind of fun in how he doesn't hide the fact he's the main antagonist of the whole thing. In fact, I wish I could give more away, but there's a very particular surprise in regards to his character that makes him more interesting. And it's more ironic when you get to that particular reveal near the end and later discover he also donned the Sherlock role for a 1993 TV movie as the famous detective.
I can't exactly reveal what the big twist is, though I will say, stick around after the end credits for a little nice bonus that ties it all up together and you'll see what I mean. Believe me when I say, if you are a major Holmes enthusiast, it's a sweet little treat.
With that said, there is a double-edged sword to this character. No pun intended, given he's supposed to be Holmes' fencing instructor. On one hand, they really don't mask the fact that he's the driving force behind what is going on. In fact, you can figure out right away this guy is part of the evil doings that are taking place. I wish they were more subtle, but I do like how Higgins plays the role. This is a guy that's great at playing bad guys. Hell, he played Major Gobbler in Raiders of the Lost Ark, so that should say something. But watching this again and knowing this guy's true identity, it makes some sense in hindsight why he's connected to Holmes and where things lead. It's clever while also an enjoyable performance. So, what big case is young Holmes set to solve? Well, a group of Egyptian cultists are going around and inducing hallucinogenic thorns into people who are part of an expedition that desecrated some tombs of theirs. And that's as far as I'm going to reveal because, again, the shock and surprise makes it more worth it. What I can say is the hallucinations of the victims are a pure highlight of the movie. They range from cartoony scary to absolutely nightmarish. There was a lot of debate on how far things could go, even as the movie's director didn't want the special effects to overshadow the characters and plot. A lot of them do feel like they came out of an EC comic, but I do love how each one differentiates from each other. They're not too grisly, and they don't go too disturbing to the point it's unwatchable. In fact, from what I read up, the only hallucination that ended up on the cutting room floor involved one of the victims hallucinating that his doorknob turns into a giant mouth and swallows his arm. His limb was supposed to go all the way into the mouth, very much up to his shoulder with the doorknob chewing on it, with blood spurting everywhere. An interesting idea, but it was cut for feeling too gruesome. And for the ones that did make it in, they are showstoppers for certain, but they don't distract. A lot of different special effects crews were hired to make each hallucination distinctive from each other, including Stephen Norrington, who worked on Return to Oz, Go-Motion animator Harry Walton, David Allen, and that's just to name a few. Even Pixar got in on the game as well. Yeah, 10 years before Toy Story, they actually did a special effect for a Steven Spielberg-produced movie where they had to animate a stained glass knight. A lot of folks tend to forget Pixar started as a division of Lucasfilms, and even did some digital effects for ILM on Star Trek II, as well as creating their first short to demonstrate their then-revolutionary animation software. Even if you don't know the movie, I'm certain you probably know the effect this came from. Anyone who studies the history of digital effects is well aware this was the first time a movie presented a digital photorealistic animated character. Even if the stained glass knight is on screen for a short amount of time, this was no easy task, taking 9 months to work on 9 shots, even with additional work up to the last minute. A lot of research was done to get the design right to match that of an 18th century stained glass window. The scene was filmed first with each movement measured between the actor and effect to make sure the digital model was set to scale and matching the live action moving camera shots with the computer. Even to this day, it's still a cool scene that holds up as well as the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, because they had to invent and carefully consider how these new effects would be accomplished. Compared to today, where it's all rush job slapdash together, here they had to pinpoint and articulate just how this would pull off, which stands the test of time on how when you take your time on something and put a lot of effort to it, the effect is going to hold up well to the point folks are going to study it, then just pass it over and ask for a do-over.
For the most part, this movie has it all. good characters, really, really good actors that put their 110% in, by the by, amazing special effects, and an entertaining, slightly flawed, but pretty good plot. So where exactly does this movie go all wrong? Well, if you haven't noticed by now, there is one particular thing I have not brought up until now. And that is the director of this feature, Barry Levinson.
For the record, Levinson is not a terrible director given the track record he carries, and even Spielberg hired him feeling there was some potential. But this was his first major studio blockbuster, and it shows given he helmed Diner and The Natural prior. Levinson's strengths definitely show when the characters are talking to each other, and I'll give some leeway on staging the big special effects scenes. And there is great attention to how he keeps the story moving, or figuring out a way to mix the animatronics and stop-motion monsters with the actors, so it looks believable. Yet, it's the action where it lacks. There are times when it feels a bit too slow-paced, or the execution doesn't quite work. Take for example near the climax when they infiltrate the Egyptian cult's pyramid. A hidden pyramid in a giant warehouse. Yeah, I'm not going to question that. Just look at this.
Ow! My neck! Ow, my ass!
Yeah, there's way too many wide shots, and the action is a bit slow to give a sense of excitement. How about later when Holmes has a climactic sword duel with his professor? Unlike the previous moment, there's too many close-ups to establish a sense of dread or fear, and even the editing is a bit too choppy to make out what's going on at times. It's a shame because Levinson's strengths lie in having characters move the story and creating some Spielbergian-style touches, like when Holmes and Watson use the flying machine to catch up with the bad guys. However, if they wanted the action scenes to be punched up, they really needed someone like Joe Johnston or Richard Donner, someone who's able to juggle story and action together. Yet for Levinson's first time, it's not half bad, but some small adjustments could have improved action scenes like this.
And this is a big shame too, knowing that at the time, during the holiday season of 1985, Young Sherlock Holmes was not a box office hit. Now granted, given its budget of $18 million, it did gross $19.7 domestically. That's not enough to officially write it as a bona fide box office smash. I guess we can chalk this one up to a lot of the competition at the time. I mean, when you have, say, another Christmas alternative like Rocky IV, that's highly anticipated to see how the Italian Stallion would fare against Dolph Lundgren playing a Russian, you bet that people are not going to place their chips on an Amblin-produced British fantasy for the whole family. Though, funny enough, it did do better overseas with a slight retitle, Young Sherlock Holmes and the Pyramid of Fear, which leads me to wonder if they decided to do an Indiana Jones-style marketing in the States, maybe could have done better, and not lead to a retitling of one of Disney's upcoming Sherlock Holmes flick, The Great Mouse Detective, which was going to be called Basil Baker Street. But alas, the underperformance of this film caused the marketing guys at Disney to reconsider their Detective Mouse flick and what it should be named. Though speaking of Indiana Jones, you want to know something weird? Real talk, I swear in my life, I see this every single year unless they don't do it this year as of this video. There are some stations that will do a marathon of the Indiana Jones movies around Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It doesn't matter if it's not associated with the holiday or anything, they'll just play them, including Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And at some point, they'll play Temple of Doom exactly on the night of Christmas Eve or at some point near the end of Christmas Day. So if a TV station can play Temple of Doom around those times, why not this one?
Heck, even Young Sherlock Holmes uses the Christmas season as a backdrop. There's snow everywhere, some gift-giving, reefs, a climactic sword fight literally on thin ice, and even Watson says a Christmas greeting near the end.
Merry Christmas, Holmes.
So how come this one gets shafted, yet Gremlins and Die Hard are the ones that get picked as a Christmas alternative? Like I said, I think it has to deal with this one being lesser known, which bites knowing there are people out there looking for some kind of alternative for the holidays if they get sick of seeing A Christmas Story or Christmas Vacation being marathon for 24 hours. Yeah, the action might be a weak point, but the characters and special effects set pieces do make up for it. And it's kind of a neat little what-if scenario to see the famous detective's childhood and know exactly the person he'll later become in life. But if you want to see a better take, check out the 7% solution where he gets teamed up with Sigmund Freud, played by Alan Arkin. It's kind of interesting seeing how these two egos battle off each other, and the way they dive into Holmes' psyche is pretty unique. Yet, if you want the more crowd-pleasing popcorn flick-style execution, this is probably your best bet, especially for the Christmas season. It's an underrated fun flick that truly deserves a new audience waiting to discover it. And let me tell you, every year I always bump into somebody that's looking for some kind of alternative for the Christmas season. And there's many I can rattle off, from Joyce Noel, The Ref, and some of the usuals that people also break out too, like Gremlins, Die Hard, and what have you. But, here's an idea for you. Why not go for something a little obscure? Something a little unheard of? And maybe that tradition will continue. Because there are times when it's nice to find a little beautiful little gem in a bargain bin sea of so many. Is Young Sherlock Holmes a perfect movie? No, far from it. But at the end of the day, it's a perfect, serviceable crowd pleaser, and one that's great for the holiday season. So if you want to cuddle up something cozy by the fire with your beloved or a good friend or someone close to you, I'd say try something a little different this year. It's elementary, to say the least, in what you choose to do. Of course, while one hunger was satisfied, another one still existed. The words of the wise, never leave your sandwich guarded by another. Well, at least she left me the chips. Son of a bitch, every year. I swear, I'm not joking. Every year, Christmas Eve, Temple of Doom. Either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
I think I just figured it out.
I'm not crazy!
Cut.
Mr. Holmes lost because of one important factor. His emotions took over. He ignored discipline. Never replace discipline with emotion.
Hi, I'm Bob Evil.
I must break you. Rocky IV, rated PG. starts Wednesday, November 27th.